Today is November 30th, and my audience today is Dahlia, Kim, Sarah, another Sarah, Allison, and my recorder is Megan Williams, and I'm Lynn Bauer. Having worked the last 7 years with behavior students, I can sympathize how one might lose their spark of purpose in this profession. However, through the years of helping my students to co-regulate their emotions, I have come to learn a lot about my own emotions, as well as how they show up for others. Imagine with me that it is a brand new start of a school day after an already very long week, and it's only Tuesday. You are already filled with immense feelings of frustration and stress when in walks your most challenging student. From refusing to listen to completing tasks, he decides to wear a hat into your classroom, knowing full well the rules say no hats are worn in school. Against your better judgment, you march up to him, swipe that hat off his head, raise your voice to say, you know the rules. No hats are worn at school. But what happens next is beyond anything you ever expected. He completely loses all self-control, picks up the nearest chair and chucks it at his now terrified peers. Schools all across the United States are having more and more occurrences of these escalated behaviors. And one of the number one significant factors is how this lack of social emotional awareness is happening for not only students, but teachers. In fact, as more of our educational staff are becoming tuned out to their emotional well-being, we are now seeing them have these types of responses that are leading them to have dangerous outcomes for children who struggle. That is why today I intend to convince you of the importance of being emotionally self-aware, as it will not only improve your capabilities in the classroom, but also the way that you communicate in a regulated state that will offer you fewer occurrences of negative consequences and self-destructive behavior. Oftentimes, the children that we serve are experiencing or have experienced some form of trauma. According to an article that was written by health writer Sahana Gupta titled How Trauma Affects Our Window of Tolerance and published in July of 2023, she shares how American psychiatrist Dan Siegel developed this concept of window of tolerance to describe how it is the ultimate range in which we need to be in order to function daily. As shown here, Dr. Andres Combines from the Mindfulness and Clinic Psychology Solution has created an example of Siegel's model to determine our window size and show how much we can go through of stress and still be able to regulate our behaviors and emotions, which is right here. Now, this also will show that if it's narrow, we are now less likely to be able to process through those emotions. And when this happens, we are at risk of having more varying occurrences of erratic behavior. Sahana would also then go on to talk about why these traumas that happen in the home with incidents such as accidents, violence, and even poverty could then cause a child after a long period of time to have unmet needs. This then causes their body and brain to go into a survival mode. And when this happens, our window of tolerance becomes more small. And when a child who has a narrow window of tolerance goes through an experience like the one I shared, they are now going into something called fight, flight, or freeze as an act of fear, because they perceive the staff who is a part of this situation as dangerous. And after this, their reactions are a way for them to avoid harm. So how do we undo this trauma or this damage? Well, let's face it, emotions are at the heart of what educators do and why they do it. And yet, sadly, stress is at an unprecedented level amongst teachers. And that is why it is critical that our school district leadership committees should become and provide encouraging academic programs to support social emotional skills to empower both staff and students, as these are the driving factors behind behaviors that affect people every day. This approach will not only keep staff in the profession and avoid burnout, but also improve our emotional well-being that will give us more chance to make positive changes to children who are suffering. Mark Brackett, professor and director at Yale Center of Emotional Intelligence, shared another article called Emotional Intelligence That We Owe Our Students and Educators. And this was published in October of 2018. Here he talked about two schools that were very similar in demographics that were from the state of Connecticut. The difference is one of them was suffering from low test scores, poor attendance, and low graduation rates, while the other one had been increasing their test scores. Their attendance and their graduation rates were quickly becoming one of the highest in the entire state. Now, what they were doing differently is that only one of them was actively choosing to uplift all of their students, because these educators have learned that what makes a child thrive is also what makes us human, our emotions. And when we understand all of our emotions, that is how we survive and thrive. So by advocating the need for collaborative academic programs that teach social emotional skills and actively supporting our educators to become passionate about their mental health, we can then model these skills with our students to create a positive learning environments that are far less stressful. And they will reignite a teacher's love for teaching, as well as inspire a student's love for learning. This is what stands between a school that is flourishing in emotional intelligence to one that is drowning with stress and burnout. So today I shared how erratic behaviors could be caused by a smaller window of tolerance, possibly caused by trauma, and how tuned out educators are having more responses to children that are triggering them in a state of fear, of fight, flight, or freeze as a survival mechanism. I also shared how our emotions are the driving factor behind behaviors, and how through co-learning social emotional skills with solid programs, we can embrace the self-awareness of being emotionally intelligent with our students. It is for these reasons I stand behind the importance of becoming emotionally self-aware, for not only increasing your capabilities in the classroom, but so that you can communicate effectively in a regulated state that is going to lower your chances for negative outcomes and self-destructive behaviors. But before I leave you today, I ask that if anything I said has caused you to have some self-reflection, and not only the way that you work at school, but also your personal life, that you were left with this need to want to know more about your emotional being, I ask that you would then advocate to your admins to include solid programs into our schools that will help teach these social emotional skills, not only to us, but to our students, so that we can have a healthy mind for our students and ourselves for generations to come. Thank you.